I'm Sian. I'm Director of Client Services at Influencer. We are a data-led influencer marketing business. I'm joined today by Rob, our Director of Measurement, who has transformed the way that influencer are working with clients, specifically when it comes to measuring our influencer marketing campaigns. We're also joined by the lovely Max Osborne, who is co-founder and chief that at ThisThat, who are a marketing, measurement and insight company, thank you, that have rebuilt a brand lift solution specifically for influencer marketing campaigns. So we're here today to talk about measurement within influencer marketing, which is arguably the industry's biggest pain point at the moment. Kicking things off, can you guys talk to us through the current landscape and how we got to this point? Rob, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. So I don't think it's a surprise, hopefully, on that influencer marketing is one of the biggest growing parts of the media mix. There's lots and lots of focus on it. As Sian said, I'm in measurement, so I've got some numbers, which I'm sure you're all excited to hear. But in 2016, when it was first measured, influencer marketing globally was $1.7 billion. Last year, 2022, it was up to $16.4 billion. And this year, it's forecasted to jump another 29% up to $21.1 billion. So you've got massive astronomical growth in influencer marketing globally. That's coming from two places. One is that you've got lots more brands are starting to do it. So obviously you've got more brands doing it. That means more money is going to the industry. But also more brands are spending more on what they're doing as well. So every campaign is getting bigger. There's bigger budgets involved. There's more reach. All of that is going on. And as the money increases, obviously attention on that increases as well. You start getting attention of your marketing director, your CFO even, and they want you to be able to prove what you're getting for that money that you're spending. So essentially what we're seeing is a shift over from where we were a few years ago, maybe, where influencer marketing was in your little pot of experimental budget, where you do it as a test and you just want to see if it works, but you're not that fussed on results. Where now you're up, you've got to justify the spend you're putting against it. You've got to justify why that money is going into influencer marketing and not other channels. And you basically need to prove the value you're getting back from it. And that's why measurement's getting to be so important in the industry.
I think that tees up perfectly. Another way to sort of look at that, there's this concept called crossing the chasm. When you think of the market adoption of like a product or a service, we are at a point where we are crossing that chasm right now. So this year at 21 billion, we're projected to continue that growth of around 30% year on year, all the way through to 2030. So that means by 2030, we could be anywhere between 130 to 150 billion in value, which feels absolutely bonkers. Which really much explains we're at the early stage. So up until now, we were selling to visionaries, early adopters, people that got excited by the influencer marketing opportunity. But now crossing that chasm, we're no longer just selling a project or a program. We actually very much are eating budget away from other channels, TV, out of home, things that have been around for quite a while. So we have to justify what role does influencer marketing play in this? Can we prove it's valuable, it's effective? We're selling to pragmatic people now, and they need evidence. So yeah, I think it's definitely coming a lot more under scrutiny, the way you describe it with attention. But it's critical to get to that next step. We're now moving into not just pragmatic. What that means is early mass market. And for us to scale, we have to really solve measurement and prove that influence marketing has a very strong vital play in the whole wider marketing mix.
So, Max, there you obviously mentioned that we're now selling to pragmatic people. We need evidence of what we're doing. With that in mind, how do you actually measure influencer marketing? But more specifically, what metrics should we be measuring? Rob?
So I think that's one of the key areas that needs work. One of the phrases which I personally don't particularly like with influencer marketing is this idea of vanity metrics, which is where a lot of folks have been in the past because we haven't had the measurement capabilities that we are building up now. So all you could do was report on engagement and those sorts of basic impressions. I don't like it as vanity because there's a sense that it's not meaningful there. Like that stuff is still meaningful, particularly when it comes to influencer marketing, where that is you're buying an audience and you want to know how that audience is engaging with the content. But the problem is it doesn't tell you the whole story. So really you need to be looking at core business metrics as well, the things that you can measure easily with other channels, and look at the whole campaign holistically, both with those delivery metrics and with the other stuff. So at Influencer, what we have is a framework that looks at three areas. First is delivery, which is all of those standard things that would have been called vanity metrics back in the day. So what are your impressions? What are your engagement? It's all very basic stuff, but it's still really, really important and core to any campaign delivery. We then also have an area looking at reaction, And this is where you're looking at how the audience is reacting to that content. So again, one of the things that's slightly different with influencer marketing is you're buying maybe a potentially smaller audience, but you're buying that audience from that creator who are engaged in it. So if you're buying that actual audience, you should probably care what they think about what you're showing them. And this is where things like sentiment analysis and thematic comment analysis can be really, really valuable. It's almost like having a mini focus group on your campaign. And some of that stuff, I think, had a bit of a bad rap when it's done at scale across just broad social data sets where it loses a bit more meaning. But when you're looking at a creator's audience, that's really, really valuable insight how your campaign performs. And then the final part, which is perhaps the most important and where we need to shift more of the industry to, is on effectiveness. And that is where you're actually going, right, like outside of the campaign metrics itself, what's been the business impact of this? And that could be things like brand lift, which I'm sure Max will go into lots of detail on in a moment. Also things like sales impact, even building influence marketing into your econometric models to measure ROI properly. All of this is stuff that we need to move the industry towards if we want to keep growing and growing the investment that we're seeing in it.
I think to tee up to that, a reason why brand lift is, I guess, becoming more and more useful is we're realizing that performance can always be amplified. You can always put more money behind ads and get more reach. Effectiveness is something that can't just be amplified. You could have one campaign with really high reach and really high sales, but then another campaign that's got the same amazing reach, but just no sales or very little sales. If you want to understand why did that happen, brand lift is a form of measurement that's very effective at capturing that. For those that don't know what brand lift, it's a survey-based methodology for measurement. You find two audiences, one audience that's been exposed to a campaign, one audience that's not been exposed. You survey both of them, and you'd very much hope that those that have been exposed to the campaign are more likely to be aware of the brand, the product, to feel a certain way, to be likely to talk about it with friends or interested in buying the product or wanting to try it out. And it's those things, the effectiveness, that help explain why one campaign worked and why one campaign didn't. And it's understanding that why that allows us to build scalable and repeatable success stories.
Yeah, makes sense. So clearly we have seen incredible movement within measurement capabilities, especially within influencer marketing. But arguably there are still challenges, especially when we're applying traditional approaches. So what are the challenges that we're still facing in measurement today? And more importantly, how do we overcome these? Rob,
Yeah, it's really easy. It's fine. I think the biggest challenge that we're finding is, like I said at the start, as you're putting more mind into this, you're getting more attention on it, and you're getting people who aren't as familiar with how influencer marketing works, who now need to understand it. And that brings challenges because quite often they bring an idea of how you can measure a different type of channel or a different type of campaign and assume you can just apply it to a different form of media activity like influencer marketing. And it doesn't work quite as simply as that. And I think what we need to do is help familiarize these people with actually what is possible and how changes you might have to make to do this type of measurement. Because on a sort of a top line level, the way you measure other activity can be applied to influencer marketing as well. But when you get down to the detail of actually doing it, that's where things get a bit different in some cases. And I promise I won't go super nerdy with me and Max here and start talking about how you like do test and balance control groups and stuff like that. But there's ways you can do stuff on, say, paid digital social that you can't necessarily do the same way on influencer content. So one of the things we have to do is work out, right, how do we get that idea of doing brand lift and how do we then make it work in an influencer context rather?
I think there's a lot I could talk about within that. There are sort of 4 points that come to mind. I'll try and highlight those each. So the first one is really the methodology. It comes under scrutiny quite a lot. Historically, there have been about 3 different ways in which you would sort of try and measure the likes of brand lift in this role. One is you would force a group of people to watch an asset, ask them questions afterwards. It's more sort of creative effectiveness. The second one is you'd ask people if they've seen an ad, but that's, people on a panel getting paid to answer surveys. So there's a bit questionable within that with claimed exposure. And the third piece, you've got on-platform solutions for brand lift, but then you've got limitations to what questions you could ask. And it's not necessarily apples to apples across the different channels. So solutions have to be built within that you can actually find people who have been exposed in the real world. Within influencer marketing, you've got different communities. You really want to hear the voices of those different communities as well. So that's first, you have to build a solution that solves that. Point 2, I think also is measurement hasn't really caught up to evolve with influencer marketing. Even in influencer marketing, we're thinking of 3 different kinds of campaigns: awareness, consideration, and conversion.
Yeah.
Consideration is sort of touching on mid-funnel somewhat. But influencers play an amazing role on shifting perceptions, building familiarity, driving relevance.
Yeah.
And these are things that drive consideration, that drive action. So I'd like us to think of more ways in which we can adopt measurement that does more of that. Let me look at my notes to make sure I get the other bits. And then I think, yeah, two other points. So accessibility, and then also taking it up a level. So in terms of accessibility, these solutions right now are very expensive, complicated, time-consuming. We have to make sure that we find solutions that don't require loads of expertise, don't take up all too much time, and aren't too expensive. We need to find solutions that sort of match every kind of campaign. And in terms of taking it up a level, if you get all those things right, you don't just use measurement to explain why the campaign happened a certain way, but you can use it in an agile format to take things up a level and understand, what do we do next? How can we optimize the creative? How can we optimize targeting? How can we optimize distribution? And that's really where the power lies within it to take things up plenty of levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying there, like from the brand perspective, is true across all the types of measurement that we should be trying to do in influencer marketing. And I think the point I was saying about being unfamiliar with it and coming with maybe unfair expectations is not supposed to be a comment on them not understanding influencer marketing. It's more a comment on where we need to push the industry to get to. So everything you can do to measure paid social or TV or Apple Press, whatever else, you should be able to apply those same ideas to influence marketing. And the challenge for us as the practitioners is to work out what tweaks there are to methodology, as you've been outlining there, to make that a reality, I think. So there's a part of the industry from our point of view that needs to be pushing this forward ourselves to meet people part way on that. Definitely.
Looping it back to crossing the chasm, perhaps, whilst influence marketing is at that point where it's crossing that chasm right now, you could say measurement is very much at its sort of innovation stage.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of new things that we have to figure out exactly how we can, bring in the industry, scale it as well. It's a really exciting time.
Yeah. So if you were to give one piece of advice to clients, agencies, media owners, specifically when it comes to measurement, what would that be, especially when it comes to, as you say, kind of moving into that consideration phase and actually making this a reality?
It sounds like a boring stock answer, but it's collaboration. And the reason I say that is because people are still new to it and they're testing it. Sometimes things haven't had the same level of planning and thinking through that they treat other campaigns with. And I think what we need to do is sort of challenge clients back to actually know, if you're going to invest in this properly and you want to see a proper return, you need to properly strategize about it. And we need to be, ideally, people like us need to be brought in an earlier stage to help advise on strategy, on creative, on which audience they go after, which creators to use, all that sort of stuff. And make it not a transactional relationship of, oh, we've just booked these campaigns with these creators because we can. Make it actually, this is a proper part of an overall marketing strategy, an overall marketing campaign plan. And then that's also where we can then come in and advise on how you measure that properly and make sure that measurement, this is really crucial, is aligned to what your campaign is trying to do. Because the amount of times that people get to the end of the planning bit and go, oh, we need some measurement, let's just throw a brand lift on or throw something on. If you're not trying to drive brand metrics, or if you're not trying to drive an audience reaction, those aren't the right tests to try and do on the campaign. So if we know up front very clearly what your objectives are, we can design a campaign that will drive those objectives, and we can design a measurement plan that will prove that it's worked and show you then, to Max's point as well, what's worked, what hasn't worked perhaps, how we can optimize better, creative best practices, all those things can flow from it. But really we have to be involved from the process and help make it a full holistic plan from the outset.
I really like that collaboration piece. There's a lot of value that measurement can bring to all the different stakeholders within the marketing mix, right from like the business owner of an agency or a brand through to people selling different campaigns, through to the influencer themselves, trying to better understand their own audiences, talent managers, campaign managers, account managers, everyone can benefit from it. I think trying to understand the value of it in its different ways is very useful to that. If I were to say the one thing that I think we need to double down on is it's the innovation stage for measurement. So now's the time to get a head start. Now's the time to invest into it. I think what you guys are doing at Influence is amazing by getting the likes of Rob and his team is a good sign of investing into measurement. So yeah, really excited for you guys.
Yeah, and I guess as well it lends itself to, specifically when talking to clients, it's education, right? We spoke earlier, they don't know what they don't know. So it's brands like yourselves that we can kind of go to market with and make sure that we are educating our clients around effective forms of measurement.
I absolutely love this like back and forth with the crossing the chasm. You know, if you go back 5-7 years ago, you had to explain what influencer marketing is. Nowadays, you don't have to explain what it is. You have to justify why it's taking budget from other people. But measurement, it is that education point.
100%.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys learned a little bit of something or are more interested to learn more. Feel free to come to us and ask us questions for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. We've been Influencer with special guest Max from ThisThat. If you've got any questions, please feel free to grab us over there. We're also on the picnic bench with the Influencer umbrella over there as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.